I think we can start now. Welcome to our panel discussion, Antisemitism in the Age of AI, Trends, Challenges, and Research Frontiers. My name is Günther Kelly, and I'll be the moderator for this event. But before I introduce the panel, we have something to celebrate. Our 2025 International Datathon and Machine Learning Competition for high school and college students just ended. This project was managed by Rachel Kelly and coordinated by Daniel Meading. We had also great partners and sponsors, the Bright Data Initiative, the Technology and Human Rights Institute of the World Jewish Congress, Jewish Federation of Greater Indianapolis, and Diane Drug. And in this competition, groups of students competed with each other on two tasks. They created a data set with the Bright Data tools and then annotated them with our annotation portal. And then they developed transformer model and tested them with a data set of annotated data that we gave them. So we have a lot of very, very good submissions on these two challenges. And we have three winning teams. The top teams they gave themselves the name Magan Code, and that was Oriel Atias, Julio Zuckerman, Eliana Wolf, and Asha Rosenfeld. Congratulations, this is the top team. And the second team is, they called themselves Bias Busters, and that was Dvir Zachotanze, Jacob Neue, and Jennifer Kronkri. And then we had thirdly also an amazing submission that we got from them was Code for Clarity. The team included Syed Afnan Adid, Mark Vinokur, and Seisha Siram. And please excuse my mispronunciation, but you really had outstanding submissions. The other members of the other teams were also really great, but we had unfortunately only three winning teams to choose. So you will be getting the prizes and the certificates. Everybody who participated in this competition, of course, gets a certificate and some, I think a t-shirt was in there as well. You will be contacted by Rachel very shortly. But now to our panel. I'm really happy that we have really an outstanding panel here. We have Ifat Barak-Cheney, who is the Director of International Affairs and Executive Director of the World Jewish Congress's Technology and Human Rights Institute. She combines diplomacy with growing expertise in technology, and under her leadership, the Institute has published significant research reports and policy papers on online antisemitism and also Holocaust distortion. Julie Ansis is a distinguished professor at the New Jersey Institute of Technology and founding director of its cyber psychology program. She has published widely on diversity, multicultural competence, law, and human rights computer interaction. And her recent article, Cyber Psychological Investigations of Social Media and Online Antisemitism, the Scholarly Landscape, offers really a comprehensive overview of research in the field. And we have Nathalie Japkowicz. She is a professor of computer science at American University. Her research focuses on AI and machine learning. And in recent years, she has led several projects on hate speech detection and monitoring, including the development of an app to detect coded forms of antisemitism on extremist platforms. So I'm really excited to have you all on this panel. And we will start with a presentation from our panelists, short presentation of about 7 minutes of each. And then I have some questions, and then eventually we'll open it up for the Q&A. So if I can ask you, Ifat, to start, you're joining us from Israel, and now I know that you have a plane to catch in a few hours, but so we are really excited that you can present what you have to say. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you everybody listening in on a Sunday or listening in afterwards. I also want to thank you again for a very female-focused panel. We're just saying how rare it is and how important it is to continue that. And to all the participants in the Datathon that we are happy to support, it's great that you did this. I think it's just such important work. And if you need internships, please contact me, because anybody who did that work, we will happily have engaged with our institute in our work and hear about your experience. So feel free to get in touch. I'll start by just saying Human Time Israel, it's day 695 since October 7th, 2023. And I used to open my presentations on these topics, always reminding people that online anti-Semitism, it's not just online, it has consequences in reality. I just no longer have that need so much because, everybody, especially on a call like this and this webinar, is just aware of this dramatic escalation we see in anti-Semitism and hate-based violence that doesn't stay online. It manifests and lives offline, online. There's no real border between the two anymore. And we talk about how it spreads online, and that's kind of more of the focus of AI especially, but it's people who are part of this ecosystem. And I think especially Julie probably looks a lot more on that aspect of online anti-Semitism. We've really seen a surge that not only has it not subsided, but it's really reshaped the ecosystem that we have of online hate. And we see within it the intersection between the technological shifts, the regulatory debates, and all of this together is just creating a very fertile ground for online anti-Semitism. I spoke, I think last year when we did a similar webinar, I kind of gave some trends to come. A lot of them have played out. I'm going to quickly revisit them and focus kind of on the AI, how that is shaping everything this year in our current trends in anti-Semitism. One of the things I mentioned in the past, and we're seeing this more, and I'm sure actually Julie will also speak about this, is this shift that we have to do from looking at pieces of content in our discussions on content moderation. That's kind of the project, the Datathon project, and looking also into how behavior is done online, right? Hate is not just a piece of content. We have to look more at the trends. We have to look more at how people are radicalized slowly, and also moderate the content online in a behavioral aspect and see, groups, people, profiles, and not just pieces of content. And I think there's more focus on that. We are definitely encouraging more of that because that really is where we need to go. We're still seeing this very big debate on free speech versus content moderation. The forces in the US seem to be going in the name of free speech in some areas. In Europe, we have the Digital Services Act in full force with penalties, but implementation of regulation is always slow, complicated, a lot of processes that need to be put in place there. A lot of processes that we see in the countries, in the EU member states that still need to be put into place so that it comes into full force. So we still see that discussion kind of debating. I think what it's creating for us in the terms of the Jewish users and the online anti-Semitism is that you can have very different experiences based on your geography, where you're based. So we see that playing, people in different locations, different countries, different continents have different problems. We have the same issue also within states, a lot of fragmentation. Trump's tax bill was looking into, a ban on AI regulation in the states. Eventually, that didn't make it into the legislation. And so states are still having a lot of AI processes and legislation regulation. Also on other issues related to content moderation. This plays out also for anti-Semitism, of course. But, we use it as an opportunity. You can work a lot on local efforts, a lot of Holocaust denial distortion discussions, definitions of anti-Semitism in different states, but it creates a patchwork that we need to be working with, and that's a difficult patchwork to work with. One thing that is still a huge issue, decentralized platforms. This is just a whole new ballgame that is very hard to deal with. We have those that are unmoderated, the Telegram. One thing that we've definitely seen October 7th and since, and the WGC Tech Institute has published research about just the use of Telegram and the shift between Telegram and other platforms for organizing. So a lot of the organizing is done on Telegram and the 4chans and other platforms, and then shifting, but also the Mastodon, the Blue Skies the whole system of moderation there is very different, and a lot more community-driven tools. And then, of course, we have AI with everything, the promise and the perils that AI has brought to this field, and we see them playing out more and more during these years. So in kind of the next 2 minutes before I finish my opening kind of remarks, I'll focus on that. So obviously AI, and we've seen this, is just a force multiplier for hate. It has become so easy to produce anti-Semitic content, hate content, not just anti-Semitism, but our work focuses on anti-Semitism, you know, conspiracy theories, full-on videos, podcasts, memes, anything. We saw just, you know, I've been on vacation for a few days, and I was like, okay, let's see what happened the last few days that I missed. And wow, just in last few days, there was Holocaust images that were found and created by AI, and fabricated images that went completely viral also on Facebook, you know, with Holocaust prisoners playing violins, and everything was fabricated. It went very viral just for the last few days and published. A few weeks ago already, we all saw like the Grok chatbot, right? Going Mecha Hitler, it called itself. Just spouting anti-Semitic content, praising Hitler, feeding anti-Semitic tropes. It was dealt with, but you know, this should have been a model that was tested and reviewed, and it's a popular model. So imagine those that are not tested and reviewed, or just used for these issues. And that's just from the last few days of me really quickly checking in what's happening. So it's very obvious that we need a lot more what we call red teaming of AI. We are working on several projects about kind of red teaming and looking at the data coming into the AI, but also how the AI is producing data, and working with the companies, again, having to work with the companies, both the companies that produce AI and then the companies that distribute content on that. But we've also been looking at AI as a tool for detection, and I have a lot of hope here. We have been testing, and then some initial research and more research is coming about chatbots detecting anti-Semitism online. And so if the simple chatbots are detecting anti-Semitism, very good. I hate saying this always, but I was wrong, because I thought it was going to do a horrible job, and actually did pretty well. I think AI doesn't have the same kind of hesitance that people, you know, human moderators have on a lot of issues. A lot of irony, humor, that people are kind of trying to figure out if it is or it's not anti-Semitism when we gave it to human reviewers. And when the AI was more certain, I was surprised. I don't know if Julie's also showing some surprise. I was surprised, and I think we actually take this as a positive sign, that we can use AI more. But I'm going to end on maybe a note of caution. We are seeing companies actually lowering the use of AI for content moderation. A lot of the processes that companies are doing in the past year, especially since January, but on X, it's been going on for a few years, is actually moving a lot of the content moderation from the hands of machine learning and AI, and putting a lot more onus on the users themselves. So a lot more use community-based content moderation. I'm happy to go further into that. I've also posted about that on the website, but I know I'm at time, but I will say this, just companies actually using less AI for detection. Unfortunately, we need to be encouraging them to use more AI, obviously, but in transparent, accountable system, ensuring minority voices are heard in the training and in the auditing of the systems, and not moving the onus of detection onto the communities. So we've got AI making everything more scalable. We have a lot of opportunity that we need to build on, working together, platforms, governments, civil society, to use the tools in a way that protects kind of our rights, our dignity, and our communities.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. We'll get into discussions then a little bit later. And I see two at least have a hands up in the audience. So we will invite you also after the talks, after a discussion here on the panel, to participate in the Q&A. But please be patient. Some more longer. We now have Professor Ansis prepared a presentation as well. Please go ahead, Julie.
Thank you, Gunter.
Joining us from New York. Thank you.
Yay. Okay. Could you see it
Yeah.
already?
Mhm.
Thank you, Ifat. That was interesting. And Gunter, I really want to thank you. Repeat what Ifat said. My appreciation to you. Number one, for being such an incredible ally. And this is so vitally important now. And also for being at the forefront of so much of this research as well. So I'm going to describe to you an investigation that I conducted that was just published in the Journal of Contemporary Antisemitism, their most recent issue. And essentially, I wanted to understand how online antisemitism is researched, as well as its breadth and its scope. I hadn't found any articles that really did this, that looked at the broader landscape. In terms of inclusion criteria as well as exclusion criteria, I was very interested in empirically based articles and manuscripts focused on hate and anti-Semitism, research on widely used platforms, and publications in the last 15 years, as well as publications written in English. So publications related to things like cyberbullying were not included in this examination. I also used qualitative analysis, grounded theory, specifically to allow for the emergence of categories, which basically involved analyzing recurring themes, looking at patterns in the literature. And so 3 themes were detected that I'm going to talk about. The first one relates to representation. And this theme includes research focused on the portrayal of Jews, Jewish people, and anti-Semitism in online contexts. So what I found was online anti-Semitism, similar to what Ifat was saying, is paralleling offline anti-Semitism. We find it in both extremist and mainstream media. We see a number of predominant themes, and these are age-old stereotypes. Again, conspiracies of Jewish global dominance, comparison of Israeli policies to the Nazis, Holocaust denial, and the promotion of violence. Those are the most prevalent themes that we're seeing online. Of course, pejorative language that's used to refer to Jews, and a number of very disturbing TikTok trends. One top trend in 2020, otherwise known as the Holocaust Challenge, where people pretended to be Holocaust victims and users shared clips of themselves with fake bruises, wearing Nazi-ordered concentration camp clothing. And there were a number of other very disturbing trends. I'm going to skip this. I want to show this. This just found its way. A friend of mine sent this to me the other day. This was published July 25th, 2025 in the San Francisco Chronicle. And it has depictions of Donald Trump at the top, right, depictions of Putin on the extreme left, Hitler on the extreme right, and Bibi Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, in the middle. And so you could read this yourself. It's the leaders speaking to each other in English with their accents, Israeli accents, Russian accents. And the cartoon is called Alpha Tyrant Afterlife and created by a person, cartoonist, Joel Rett. And you have leaders. You have the leaders of these countries in hell, punished for war crimes, references to genocide, references to nerve gas. You see the exaggerated facial features, which are very typical of anti-Semitic caricatures. You have flames. They're obviously in hell. Another age-old anti-Semitic theme of Jews being damned or Jews being evil. and of course, equating Israeli military actions post-October 7th with Nazi methods, which is clear-cut Holocaust inversion. There's absolutely no context here. It's not a criticism of Israeli policies. These are anti-Semitic visual tropes. And note also, and the humanities people could really do a deeper dive, Bibi Netanyahu is right in the middle. He's the only one who's clutching a skull. I'm trying to change. I wanted to show another cartoon. It's a way back, but interestingly, to Ifat's points, is an anti-Semitic cartoon, and I put it in Claude, and I asked Claude to tell me what the major anti-Semitic tropes that were associated with the image. Interestingly, Claude responded by saying, I can't and won't analyze or engage with anti-Semitic content, even for educational purposes, as this could inadvertently amplify Jewish stereotypes. That may be interesting to talk about and take a look at. That is how this is particularly, or how this could be problematic in terms of understanding anti-Semitic imagery. The second theme focused on developing data-driven systems designed to identify, detect, and categorize anti-Semitic content. Gunter Jakeli has been at the forefront of this work, focusing on identifying, labeling content using keywords. And so the process involves using keywords such as Jew, Jewish, anti-Semitic, and Nazis to collect data in the form of text, images, videos through social media platforms. The data is then annotated by human beings or human raters to classify content as anti-Semitic or not anti-Semitic. And next, researchers use this information to train machine learning classifiers that are able then to distinguish between anti-Semitic and non-anti-Semitic content. The third theme assesses the breadth and scope of online anti-Semitism over time, and looks at the percentages of social media content in the second point, tweets about Jews, Israel, and anti-Semitism, the increase in anti-Semitic posts worldwide, and interestingly correlating that with current events, either anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish celebrity statements, events in the world such as COVID. We saw a lot of anti-Semitic imagery during the COVID pandemic, as well as geopolitical events such as the Gaza conflict. And so there are a number of implications for this work. One, of course, is rising anti-Semitism, is especially concerning for youth on platforms such as TikTok, with TikTok being so incredibly engaging with filters and music, very, very short clips. So that's very useful for our increasingly short attention spans. And so it's incredibly engaging, and it's the platform where many younger people, Gen Z generation, find themselves. There are, of course, detection challenges, as Ifat mentioned, the context, sarcasm, for example. Sometimes sarcasm is used by social media influencers, and that's other work that I'm engaging with. And it's used to combat anti-Semitism, not promote it. So that would mean that content is not necessarily anti-Semitic. There are opportunities for interventions, definitely improved automated detection using multimodal assessments, and ideas about promoting more positive content. And this goes to interventions online with an example of Lily Ebert, who was a Holocaust survivor. She passed not too long ago, and her grandson had her posting videos, or he posted the videos on TikTok that were factual in content. And there's absolutely, and this is one of my biggest points, a need for interdisciplinary approaches that includes psychologists, that includes folks in the humanities, that includes computer scientists, engineers, to really combat this problem. I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julie. That was this overview, I think, is for those who are interested in the academic work. It's really a good overview to look at, and the journal is a good journal that people, not everything is open access, but some of the articles are. But I highly recommend this article. Now we go on to Philadelphia, if I may. So Professor Japkowicz is joining us from Philadelphia, and she has done really exciting work in the last couple of years, or even before that, 5 years. But in the last couple of years, I was really struck by the many very interesting articles that you published. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you, Gunther, for setting up this webinar. It is great to have this multidisciplinary discussion. Congratulations as well to the people who participated in the Datathon and the winners. I was very excited to hear that so many young people are interested in this and participated. So this is great. So thank you as well to Yifat and Julie, because you gave excellent introduction to what I'm going to talk about. As Gunther mentioned, what I'm doing is much narrower than what you heard up to now. Like computer scientists will work on systems that do a particular things, and that's exactly what I want to talk about. So here I'll discuss the app that Gunther mentioned before that we've been working on for the past 3 or so years, whose goal is to discover emergent coded anti-Semitic terminology. So I will talk about it by taking you through an example. You don't have to worry, it will not be technical. I made a point of not talking about anything technical, but I would be happy to share technical details if you want to reach out to me later on. So let me start with an example of a term that I am sure many of you know. And if you don't know it, you may want to look at the definition from the Translate Hate Glossary by the American Jewish Committee of the term Zog, which stands for Zionist Occupied Government. So according to the glossary, it is a white supremacist belief declaring that the US government is controlled by Jews. And you can see on these pictures expressions of this concept. And as you can tell, it's not a terribly friendly term, but it is one instance of Zog, one type of Zog. I want to introduce you to another Zog, Zog the Friendly Dragon. So just by showing you this, I think you have an idea of where I may be going with the kind of work I have done. Now, I think that Zog was just a coincidence. The people who created Zog the Friendly Dragon had no knowledge of the other Zog. But in other cases, it's the creation of the terms is not completely by chance. So here's another example of the term globalist, which if you look on the right, at least for me, I don't know what you see, but on the right, you have definitely an anti-Semitic post where globalist is a stand-in for the Jews. But if you look on the left, you will see a motto by the Hyatt hotels, welcoming globalist explorers, discoverers. They're just being cute with the term globalist here. In no way, I believe, there is anti-Semitism there. So now, so this is the problem the general problem I'm looking at. And Julie did an excellent job introducing the problem of hate speech detection. I want to follow up on this and try to think about how is hate speech detection done? And the problems that the examples that I showed you cause to these systems. So if you think of it, the simplest thing you can do is really search for keywords. And then keywords that you know are anti-Semitic, and assign an anti-Semitic label to any text, any post that uses that label. It works beautifully. If you use the term kike, kike is not a coded term. Nothing that uses the term kike will not be anti-Semitic. So perfect. However, if you use Zog, if you use globalist, our poor dragon will be coined anti-Semitic, and so will the Hyatt Hotel, which should not be the case. In fact, it's even worse, because think of mistyping something. So let's say some person posts that, oh, yesterday I went to the mall and bought John a kite, meaning a kite, but the person misspelled. Well, all of a sudden, this benign statement would become anti-Semitic, and that's a huge problem. So thankfully, and as Julie mentioned, and thanks to the really the progress in AI that we've seen in the past 10 years or so, we do have more sophisticated methods. These are machine learning based, and they do account for context, meaning that if they do a good job, then we will be able to distinguish between the good zogs and the bad zogs, and so on and so forth. The way it's done is by having some transformers that will take the text and, like, with including the context, turning into some numerical vectors. And once we have numerical vectors, then we have all the mathematical tools at our disposal. We can compare them, we can, and so on. We can do a lot of different manipulations, and basically look at distance between vectors and say that those that are close to vectors that we know already represent anti-Semitic content are probably anti-Semitic as well. So this is all good, but it's complicated by the fact that, as Julie mentioned, in order to have machine learning methods, you need training sets. And to have a training set, here we're talking about supervised learning in particular. And in order to have machine learning methods that can work, you need to gather text and then have human analysts go through and label the social posts. As you can imagine, they have to label thousands and thousands of them, and it's a tedious task. Psychologically speaking, it's a very, very difficult task because people see a lot of ugliness in these posts. And this is the point that I'm really focusing on, the language evolves very quickly, and it's possible that the analyst may not be aware of the new terms that have come up. And language evolution is completely normal, right? If you take take Yiddish, which is a beautiful case of it, it comes from medieval German. And then as time went, Yiddish was spoken in many countries, like France, my country, or others, and picked up words from the different places. Obviously, it picked up terms from the Torah, from Hebrew, and all this got integrated. And today it's not much spoken, unfortunately, but the Yiddish that was spoken before the Holocaust or in certain communities today is so different from the medieval German it comes from. So there obviously was an evolution. I also lived in Quebec for a long time, and being a Francophone from France, I saw the deviation of the language. So there is a natural language evolution. Well, this happens also on social media. And although I haven't tested it, I believe it happens quickly. It happens quickly because the language used on social media is very terse, very simple in certain ways. You also have an upmanship game going on where people try to do better than the other. And as a result, I believe that the evolution is very quick. And that's where my work comes in. So what we have done is an app which I present here. The idea of the app, and I'll tell you how I hope it can be useful for human analysts. The idea is that you input some term you're interested in, and the app will give you a number of terms that may be new, that is related to the term that you included, and that is also related to anti-Semitic context. So in this particular case, I didn't do a big search. It was only for less than a month, maybe 3 weeks, and it was a small data set. But Globalist brought us the terms brown egalitarian socialist, greater existential, well, I don't know what else, bipolar world, general conflagration, wastage capitalism, genocidal dictator, and so on and so forth. And the app can also show you the context in which these terms occur. So how do I hope that this tool could be useful for human analysts? What I hope is that when faced with thousands of posts to label, the analysts could actually run the app first on their data, get a list of words, and try to remember them as they do the analysis, in the hope that maybe their eye will, the fear is that analysts may miss certain content. So maybe having seen those terms before, they will pay attention to certain content that should have been, looked upon. So that's it for me. Thank you very much. And let me stop sharing. There we go.
Thank you so much, Nathalie. We have not so much time left, so we'll only have one round of questions, if that's okay with you, because we want to get some questions also from the audience. So I would like to combine maybe two questions to you, Ifad. You have been thinking and working a lot really with governments and or seeing what can be done, but also with these big social media platforms. But what do you think are some of the most urgent challenges that there are that there could be an intervention? And also, how do you've been working in this field for some years now, how do you balance the freedom of speech, the freedom of expression, with the clear need to maybe not ban, but at least to downgrade a lot of these very hateful and really dangerous rhetoric and imagery and so on that we see on social media?
So you get to combine the questions and I still need to answer them quickly, huh? We'll see. And also I got so many interesting thoughts and comments from Julie and Nathalie's stuff that maybe I'll make a remark on that and something on that as well.
Good.
But, one thing
you have
I
freedom of
mentioned,
expression, Ifad. You say what you want to say.
yeah. So maybe I'll start that, right? It's the reason, there's a good reason that the institute that we established is called the Institute for Technology and Human Rights. We want to make sure that this is where we start from in this discussion, and not something that people think, oh, well, we are ignoring human rights. I'm a human rights lawyer in my training and in my past. So we look at freedom of expression as a fundamental right. We look at balance of rights. It's not an absolute right. And also just looking at the core, the idea that freedom of expression is also given to protect minorities from governments, from not being able to express themselves. And we want to make sure that that aspect of freedom of expression is also not forgotten. It's not a weapon of the majorities. I think a lot of times in kind of the version of how society and social media and freedom of expression has been presented and has been litigated even in courts, it's really become a little bit of a weapon of the majorities. And it came to protect minorities. And I want to make sure that that's part of this process. And when I come to speak to a government or a social media company or an online platform, it's from a place of, I want to also make sure that as a Jewish person, I have the right and the ability and the safe space to express myself and to be. And it's part of this discussion. We're also kind of recognizing that, a lot of it is hate speech. And what is hate speech exactly? And where is that balance between hate speech and freedom of expression? And, when you look at just one piece of content, if you're looking, again, this is my first comment, if you're looking for that one piece of comment that is going to be, oh, this is hate speech or this is call for violence, you're going to miss the process. And that's why I'm encouraging really looking at hate as a process and this as a process that leads to violence, these are the process that leads to hateful behavior and to hatred. And so maybe a comment doesn't seem like it is, very hateful, but if it's within this ecosystem by people in groups, etc., it's going to be part of that process that we need to take care of in different ways. Part of, by the way, of the interventions that we do with companies is flagging people who are, from their search terms or from the behavior online, are being radicalized, and the companies and working with companies and detecting people who they see are being radicalized and actually directing them to resources for prevention. Organizations and also the WC is working with organizations and providing them information how to detect kind of people who are being radicalized by anti-Semitism as well. So there's a lot of work here. Another big question on this thing, which I think we're looking at more, is who has free speech, right? Do bots have actually free speech? Is that what we're looking for? And so much of it today is bots, and because it's online, it's considered people, but it's not. Do state actors have freedom of speech if it's like done by state actors? Does AI have free speech? You know, is that where we're going for? And I think those questions are going to be more and more and more critical, especially as we look at AI, bots, and kind of the unnatural behaviors online. And so when we just say, oh, freedom of speech on the internet, it's, you know, there are a lot of different actors on the internet, and we do need to differentiate them as well. I'll end this just on the challenge side again. A lot of it just is fragmentation. It's very hard to work when you have so many different systems. And the two people who take advantage of that the most, the companies, because they can kind of say, oh, well, you know, in this country, we're just going to ban this, in this country, we're not. And it's hard for them, but they do take advantage. And the extremists. The extremists are looking for all those loopholes. They work very quickly, not just with language, but also with finding those loopholes, finding what they can say and how they can say, understanding the policies. And all these fragmentation makes it very hard to work for, and very hard for a Jewish person to say, okay, in one country, I can, you know, I get less protection than in the other, or in one platform, I get less protection than the other. And that makes it very hard.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We will need to look into the details. One thing I want to move now to Professor Ance's expertise in psychology. Julie, maybe you can answer us a little bit of the impact from a psychological perspective that this has, and that was Ifat also made a hint already to that. What that means for Jews in these spaces. So maybe you can answer a little bit about like going more into the psychological perspective of that.
Sure. Well, we see that the hate is constant. The nature of the hate is somewhat unpredictable. It's shape shifting, which is destabilizing psychologically. So on an individual level, on a community level, this constant exposure to propaganda, hate, vitriol, incitement to violence against Jewish people, as well as Zionists, is associated with chronic stress, anxiety, depression, and trauma. We're seeing this in the Jewish community now, which includes triggering all our intergenerational trauma. And that's for the diversity of Jews, Eastern European, Sephardic, Mizrahi. It's not only the Holocaust trauma. And as part of this trauma, there's this heightened vigilance, which again, we are also accustomed to, but it's so extreme now in Jewish individuals and communities. Also, and I think very importantly, we see this constant dehumanization of Jews, as well as a constant delegitimization of their concerns, of their fears, of their anxieties, which are valid. And this reduces empathy. And it makes it easier for people to justify violence and hostility. And we see evidence of that in some of the murderers of some of the most anti-Semitic attacks in the United States. The Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh in 2018, the shooting in Poway, California in 2019, those murderers were active in neo-Nazi social media groups. So to Ifat's point of finding those folks who are vulnerable to such extremist propaganda is crucial to preventing further violence and murders. If you look at the most recent shooter, the school shooter in Minneapolis, he had on his weapons, on his guns in silver marker, a number of hateful messages, not only that targeted the Jewish community, but also targeted Christians, Black people, LGBT. But with regard to the Jewish community, he had in silver marker written on these weapons, burn Israel. 6 million wasn't enough, in reference to the 6 million Jews that were murdered in the Holocaust. Extra thick Jew gas, which relates to the gas in the concentration in the chambers in the concentration camps where Jews were murdered. So I think it's very important to look at this relationship between online hate, how easily accessible it is, how prevalent it is, which makes it different from sort of offline communication and messaging, and how that's normalizing anti-Semitism and how it's encouraging murder and violence. And we're actually seeing this worldwide.
Thank you. Yes, and I think that the research on this, there is a little bit of research on that, but I definitely think there needs to be more on the impact and what that really then means and what can be done about it. So one thing that, Nathalie, I want to come back to you, to your app. So you've successfully created an app that works at least for one platform. Maybe you have expanded now to other platforms. But where do you see like this can be seen as a pioneering app, I think, that works. But where do you see like the biggest gaps in these approaches? And I mean, you did it with a very small team, but yeah, what needs to be done?
Okay, thank you very much. First, let me comment. I have to thank Julie for that therapy session you just gave us in 5 minutes. We all feel this way, and we can talk to our friends and know that we are feeling similarly, but having an expert put it in those terms really helps. So thank you. To your question, Gunther, it depends who does the work. So the computer scientist and AI community, I think, does not always deal with this problem in the best way. I see 3 gaps in what is being done. The first 2 are related. The first one is that computer scientists, AI people, tend to see very complex human problems and think, oh, that's easy, we can just transform it into a mathematical form and solve it. As a result, they tend to look at all kinds of hatred, all at the same time, not paying attention to the fact that each minority has a particular history, a particular culture, and that the relationship between the general public, like with the larger community and that minority is specific. And by the same token, the second gap, I would say, which is related to the first one, is that they tend to use a broad brush approach. So these machine learning techniques are amazing. And I've been in the field for 30 years, and I can tell you that 20 years ago, 20 years ago, I certainly did not imagine that we would be where we are today. So they are extremely powerful machines, very amazing approaches. As a scientist, I am amazed at what we've done. But there's again this idea of simplicity. We'll use this machine that will work well with everything. Let me pause for a second before I move to my third gap to say that your group, Gunther, Iska, and the Decoding Antisemitism group are doing a wonderful job of actually going beyond that, saying, no, we will only look at anti-Semitism. No, we will look at the cultural specificities and the historical. And you are going beyond this general AI approach. So I am thankful, and I'm going to try to do the same as well. Now, the third gap that I want to mention is something that perhaps we cannot do right away because it's a bit too early, but that I think we have to think about. Right now, the methods use supervised learning. And supervised learning has the disadvantage of not being very creative. Humans, on the other hand, are extremely creative, even the bad ones, especially the bad ones, maybe. They use a lot of irony, if you look at these posts, they are extremely creative in certain cases. And I think that if we keep on thinking of the problem from a supervised learning point of view, meaning where we have the data that has been labeled before, we are not going to tap into that creativity. And I would say we should perhaps look at some unsupervised methods, which will not give us the answers. Unsupervised is like where you have the data, but you don't have a human that said what the data is about, didn't label it. So you let the machine discover things, and it will not tell you what the things it discovers are, but it will group them together to say these things we've discovered are similar to each other. And then a human analyst may look at them and say, oh, that's a new expression of anti-Semitism. So this is what I think are the things we need to think about as a computer science AI community.
More of like a partnership relations with AI than just like us giving the AI the data sets and then letting it work, but also finding some looking at findings that AI can give us and for inspiration. Okay, so now we have only 10 minutes left for the Q&A. So really invite everybody in the audience to either raise your hand, and I will also invite you then to the panel, and then please keep your question very short, or you can put your question in the chat, and then I will read it out to the panelists. I have already 2 here that can promote to the panel, but we have a question from Liz Berger. How can your research be used to advise community or governments or government entities to measure online antisemitism? Some entities in some countries spend much time in the annual reports reflecting on online antisemitism, and some do not at all. How can these tools be used to improve measurement, especially when the nature of online antisemitism is often cross-national? Yeah, this measurement, I mean, in our work, it has really been a question how to really measure that. And then over time, with so many changes happening so fast. I don't know who wants to answer this question. Who has some ideas?
I'm happy to take the maybe 2 aspects of this. One, we are working very hard to give tools to the Jewish communities, and honestly, a very broad definition of Jewish communities and organizations, to report and to be able to analyze that data. And I don't mean just reporting to the social media companies, because part of the problem is that you report something to a social media company, right? You get an answer a day to half a month, half a year after. You don't even remember. I got one like the other day and I was like, wait, I don't even remember this post. Which one was it? I need to check. What was it about? What was posting? But also like, and that's it. So we have tools that we are working with communities and organizations to be able to receive reports very easily, very quickly from their community members, so that they can see and we can analyze kind of what it is and what are the trends, and then take those to the governments and companies as well, understand the trend. Because even if we encourage reporting, it's going to go to the companies and not to the actual people, the research analysts. And also, as we know very well, especially all the people on this panel, that once it goes to the companies, you're never going to see it. Like one of the biggest problems and one of the points that we always work on with companies, with governments, is that we need more access to data. There's no access to data. It's very limited. Companies that do give access to their API and their data, it's very limited. It's very who and what and how you can see it. And it makes the research very difficult. So that's one point, giving tools for the reporting and research, and also working to just increase access to data. And then, as you mentioned in your question very correctly, some governments just don't do any accountability about these issues. So a lot of our work encouraging governments and be like law enforcement workers, etc., to actually do more analysis and reporting on online anti-Semitism, online hate, push the companies to be more transparent, but encourage governments and help them actually have data on online anti-Semitism and online hate speech in general. So a lot of the work is with that, and also with international organizations, EU, OSCE, UN, of course, encouraging the data collection and publication.
Yeah, thank you. There's one question, if you are all available to speak to American Jewish organizations. I cannot speak for you, but I think, and that's a question also, how to reach you. I think most of you can easily find your contact details online. I'm not sure about Ifat, if that's the case as well, but I think you all have websites where people can find it easily.
You know, the sad thing, Gunther, is because of all the violence, our contact details are more hidden, but you can still find me, and you can definitely find my LinkedIn, etc. But actually, fairly recently, because of all the attacks, and a lot of our contact data has actually been concealed online.
Yeah. Yeah. And also a lot of the work. So look at, just search these 3 experts' names, and you'll find a lot of publications there, and the Institute as well for that was mentioned at the World Jewish Congress on the website. This webinar will be recorded, yes, and we will hopefully, if the speakers agree, then publish it. So just bear with us another week or so. And there's another question about the LLM providers. So that's, I think, an important thing. And Ifat, in your opening statements, you mentioned that a bit. So what to do with the LLM providers? Can we, do we have even some way of telling them whether they should put guardrails against hate speech, maybe as an option, or put this somehow on? Is that on the radar? And maybe there is already something, but I just don't know how they handle it. And this is constantly changing. So I don't know what your views on this are.
Right. Julia actually mentioned something so interesting that I'm going to review, because you mentioned the clause response that they don't want to even engage with. And we're actually almost seeing this kind of reverse need to, how do we get them to a point where they can engage with it enough? So the answer is not just, you know, I'm not talking about it, but not to a point where it's, and this, you know, encouraging in any way anti-Semitism. And I think it's a challenge there, right? And it was very interesting when you mentioned that, Julie. I'm going to have to go back and look if it's changed in the past months. We're working with some of the companies that do AI, and some of it is just it's the guardrails, you know, and how do you do that? Some of it is the data sets that come in, and another aspect is, of course, just the responses that they provide, what we call the red teaming. So all the guardrails, all the checks that they do. There are a few projects kind of working on that. So these companies are huge. There's a lot of them. It's a very open field. So maybe you can work with like OpenAI, which is more of a research institution, and it's kind of open for feedback and research, but it's not exactly a company that puts the same kind of work into it. And others. So again, fragmentation, different companies, different responses. I see a lot of really interesting questions in the chat. I will say I'm available for further discussion with anybody, or just encourage Jennifer to do another session, follow up.
Yes, we will do more, that's for sure. Maybe we can go one more minute or two. Nathalie, I see you want to say something. Please go ahead.
Yeah, if I may, I'd like to address the question of guardrails from a technical point of view. It is a difficult problem, and there's always an ethical problem when you talk about guardrails and about doing these things automatically. As in my presentation, I said how you can, you know, have label things that are anti-Semitic that are not, and vice versa. And the problems are difficult because, well, first there is the human agreement. What do we agree should go through and what not? And already human beings do not agree on this. But then beyond this, there's the technical issue. Algorithms have biases, and the algorithms themselves have biases, but the data that you give it create extra biases. And having guardrails that like really finding a way to control what the guardrails do is really a very difficult problem, full of ethical questions that we need to worry as well.
Correct. Yeah. There are more and more interesting questions coming in. And Ifat, I think you're right. We need to follow up another webinar because we're running out of time. There's, I just want to mention this one very interesting question about by Roberta Ann Kapikowicz, I think, about the differences in different languages and different regions. Yes, this is a huge problem. Most of the research is done only in English and some other languages. And the monitoring also, I think this is, it's done only in some languages. And of course, this is a huge problem. And also then what to do with that, how does it relate to racism or other forms of discrimination? These are huge topics that we need another webinar for, I think. So please join me in thanking our really 3 outstanding panelists. we have to finish here. At least one has to catch a plane, and not too long, and we will follow up. And then please, if you have any questions, send them to me, and I can then forward that to the panelists. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for the
you.
engagement.
Thank you.